Agriculture has never been simple. It's shaped by weather and markets, policy and politics, forces that often originate far from the farm gate. Headlines move fast, policies shift, markets react, but the impact of those changes doesn't just show up on screen, it shows up on farms and ranches, in families and rural communities. This podcast is about taking the time to explore what's happening in agriculture and what it means for the people living it, with clarity, context, and perspective. I'm Corryn La Rue, and this is Farm Unfiltered. Welcome to Farm Unfiltered. We have a unique episode this week. I'm joined by Farm and Ranch Media farm broadcaster Susan Littlefield, my coworker and great friend who also reports for the American Ag Network with me. She's joining us for this episode to talk about the Nebraska wildfires. So she lives in Nebraska and is seeing the skies above her own farm completely full of ash and debris. And she's actually a volunteer firefighter as well, making her a perfect addition to this episode. So Susan, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing on the ground.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for giving some recognition to what is happening. It's been kind of frustrating. We have not seen a lot of national news coverage of these wildfires. 800,000 plus acres has burned. That is the size of the state of Rhode Island. And we kind of figured we would get some sort of blurbs. Now, I should say the Today Show in their weather talked about Nebraska burning, talked about the lack of rain. They hit it, but that was all. There was no stories about, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is what's going on. So I appreciate the recognition. So it's not just the western half of the state that is burning. We've got some fires that are happening on the east side of the state as well. They're not as big of magnitude, and they don't go on for days and days and days. But there's Saunders County paging out Butler County and I don't know what other counties, but to say, hey, we need assistance, bring your chainsaws, because it was fire in an underbrush area. And anywhere in the state of Nebraska, I always ask people, what do you think Nebraska is? And they always say flat, which it isn't. We do get some spots that are flat, but we've got a lot of river moving through. On the eastern half of the state, we've got a lot of hills and valleys, and then there's the gorgeous sand hills. If you have never had the opportunity to see the beauty of the sand hills, I highly recommend, except for this area that burned, because it is absolutely beautiful. The ecosystem is beyond something you've ever seen. And now, as our Director of Agriculture, Sherry Vinton, says, it looks like the Sierra Desert. There's no vegetation, there's no trees, there's just nothing. It's just sand. And I kind of did joke, that's not the kind of exfoliation anybody wants to have. And that's from blowing sand.
Oh yeah. And let's just start here. I mean, how did these fires start?
Well, from everything that I've read and seen and talking to other firefighters, the big one started from a power line. High winds, power lines, whether that power line snapped and landed on the ground or whether the lines bounced off each other and put sparks. That part, I don't know. I haven't been able to get any full confirmation on that, but it was started by a power line. So it wasn't a man-made fire, somebody having a campfire, somebody having a burn pile, somebody flipping a cigarette out the window. It was just started by the winds, which, jokingly I say this, never blow in Nebraska.
No, of course not.
So that's not a good combination, because fire can't burn without oxygen. And we have been so dry. And these pastures had not seen a lot of snow, had not seen a lot of rain. So they were tinder dry in many areas. And man, oh man, it doesn't take much to get it to take off.
And I mean, talking about, the oxygen, the warm weather, dry ground, and also fuel for the fire. I mean, when you have this much acreage of land that is being really exfoliated by the wind, you also have, the variable of what the fires can even burn. And, in many wildfires, you'll have a burn come through and it won't come back because there's nothing left to burn. But that's not necessarily the case this time around. They had it contained and then it restarted again. Is that right?
Yeah, it did. It rekindled on Wednesday. I saw a couple posts from some of the ranchers out that direction that said it's back. And that's one of the unique things about fire, because you could have, for example, if you have, excuse me for clearing my throat, you have a fire pit and you have a nice little fire. You toast some marshmallows, make some s'mores, have hot dogs, whatever. Um, you next day, you thought you put it out, maybe you threw some water on it or something, and the next morning, it's windy, and you're like, "Wait a second, is that," and you're looking, that log is burning, and that's
Yeah.
exactly how it's happening too. A rekindle can happen so easily when the wind is right, and it just rekindles one little hot spot, and it can take off once again.
Yeah. And just in terms of livestock and community impact, I know you've heard from some ranchers that have, or even seen stories online that have had to, just open the gates to their farms and just let their livestock go. I mean, that's something you've thought about too. We were kind of talking about this, before we started the episode of you were thinking, well, what would I do?
Mhm.
And it's a very real possibility for you being in Nebraska. And even though, folks may be miles or hundreds of miles from the front line of the fire, we've seen time and time again, especially with the wildfires in California. I'm from California. I grew up around, we didn't get snow where I was at. We got ash in the middle of the summer. And it would just cover our cars, and they would be, it would be ash from 4 hours north or 4 hours south. And so, you might be far from the actual fire, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily out of the risk area, because embers, especially with winds like this, embers can get picked up and travel for miles, land in a patch of dry grass, and start a separate fire there. And so, just kind of walk me through what that's looking like in terms of producer impact.
Yeah, so, you going back to the very beginning when you made the comment about the livestock, and I sit here and think, as I was doing chores the other night, how would I move my livestock? How would I get all of our sheep, get all of our dairy goats, get the cattle out of the steers out of the feedlot? Where would I go? How would you move them? Our trailer isn't big enough to put everybody on all
Right.
at once. And I think for many of these folks, that's some of the things that went through their mind. I think the biggest save, and just in the conversations I've had, is it's calving time, and mama cows were up near the barns, they were by the corrals, they were nearby. So that helped, and they could see the direction that the fire was going in, and so they could kind of move these cows to this area. Over 40,000 cows have been displaced up till this point. Have not heard a lot of loss, and that might take some time as folks go in and start to assess, and not to even think about the miles upon miles of fencing that is gone. I mean, it's not like you can just walk back up there, pick that barbed wire up, and take a fence line nail and tap it in and be ready to go, because that's been damaged. Posts have to be replaced. There have been folks that have put trailers out, like at the end of their lane, and said, anything you want to donate to the wildfires, I'm going to be taking them out on such and such a day. And people have come to find their trailers overflowing with
Wow.
donations of fencing supplies, gloves, you name it. And I'm thinking, I bet there's going to be a lot of FFA and 4-H clubs that are going to be saying, hey, this is what we want to do for our service project. We want to give back to our ranching community. But there was a story I saw online of a gentleman who, and I do apologize because I cannot think of his name at the moment, but um, they told him he had to leave. The fires were coming. You need to get out of here. Um, Open the corrals and just let everybody go. And I can't, in my heart, as a livestock producer, as a human being, cannot imagine um, the thoughts and the despair and the sadness of, I've let you down. I'm your caretaker
Yeah.
from the Lord, and here I go. I gotta just send you out and pray that you guys are okay. And for him, it sounded like everything was livestock wise, but he lost his corrals, he lost his barn, he lost his shop, he lost his feed source, he lost his grazing pastures, but
Yeah.
he did not lose his house, because those firefighters stayed behind and kept the flames off of his house. So, I mean, if there's
Wow.
one positive that comes out of this, he does have a place to lay his head at night. And like he said, corrals can be rebuilt. Um, Lives, cannot. And we do know that Rose White lost her life. She was 86 years old. Her son had told her the flames were coming, the smoke was coming, she needed to go. And the last conversation he said he had with his mom was that, okay, I'm putting some things in a suitcase, I'll be on my way. And when she didn't arrive, that's when they got worried. And they found her 12 feet from her pickup. She got disoriented in the smoke and just went into one of the ravines along one of the county roads. So
Wow.
it's not flat, perfect terrain. There's,
Yeah.
those hotshot firefighters, those volunteer fires, the career for firefighters that came in. There was a lot of up and down valley hills. And if you could imagine being sent, like Corryn, I would have you come to my place without GPS, without knowing the roads, and say, okay, I need you to fight a fire in this area. Well, how far is the river? Or how far is
Right.
this, that, and so friends of mine who went out to fight that fire talked about, driving in areas you had no clue. You
Right.
had no clue if you were going to come up on somebody's fence, if you were going to come up on another road. You just looked for the glow and you went and fought it and did what you could do.
And I mean, even if you're familiar with the area, when you have a fire like that come through, it's very disorienting and it changes the landscape. And you think, okay, I can kind of see geographically what's going on with the hills, but that's if you have the vision. And with the smoke and all the debris and just the dust and everything being blown up by the wind, you can't it looks like almost like a war zone. I mean, it changes the landscape completely, and it just adds another element of just you're unsure.
I
And
had
it's
some, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, in a situation like that where it's life or death, I mean, I just can't imagine that pressure.
I had somebody ask me, what is it like to drive out in a field? Like we fight field fires all the time in the western part of the state, especially during harvest time. What's it like driving in a field fire when you've got smoke around you? And I said, well, it's kind of like driving in a blizzard.
Yeah.
You can't really see. The only benefit is the lights of your vehicles don't reflect back on you like they do in the snow. But
Right.
yeah, it can easily disorient the best person out there. And you think of trying to get 40,000 head of cattle moved and get them away from the flames. And I wonder what the long-term effects are. God bless those veterinarians because they're out there right now treating those baby calves who have a cough,
Yeah.
finding out who's got, fire lung and that kind of stuff from the smoke that they inhaled, as we little ones, as they try to stay close to mama when they were being moved.
Yeah. And I mean, you talk about producers losing, their pastures and their feed sources, but we're also seeing an influx of community support and people coming in and donating hay, feed, supplies from not just Nebraska, but from states
Mhm.
surrounding it. And so, I think in such a dark tragedy that is such a light that I mean, you were talking earlier. There was a convoy of not just big semis, but people with their private vehicles, even whether it was 70 bales, 100 bales, or even just a couple. So
Yeah.
can you just talk about the community impact that we're seeing here?
Yeah, the community impact is amazing. We have a saying here in Nebraska called Nebraska Strong. I actually ordered a t-shirt and I was hoping it would be here before you and I talked. And it's an
Yep.
outline of the state of Nebraska with flames all the way around it. Uh,
Yeah.
Neighbors help neighbors. Neighbors don't care what your religion is, what your political affiliation is, whether your kid plays basketball, football, is a book smart. They don't care about that. What they care about is you as a human being, the work that you do in your ranching operation, and they step up to help. So they had over 500 firefighters from 30 states that came out
Wow.
to fight the fires. That's one heck of a big neighborhood when you think
Oh
about it.
yeah.
But the word came out, you got 40,000 cows or just cattle in general. They need to be fed. They need to
Mhm.
eat because that feed stuff opportunity's been lost. And it didn't take long for word to come out of where drop sites were or where folks could bring hay. And just in Columbus, Highway 8130, a major intersection where 81, goes all the way up to Canada and 30 goes out west. Um, they shut down the road so these semis and these personal vehicles could come through. And the video I saw was over 3 minutes long, and it was just one after another after another. And I'm standing there watching this, and I'm like, the video, and I'm like, okay, don't cry, don't cry, because
Right.
it was so emotionally moving knowing that, we have not had a lot of snow. We have not had a lot of rain. Eric Snodgrass, over at Nutrien, always talks about how dry it is right now in Kansas, in Nebraska. And so we know, like, the hay we have right now, we've got enough hay to get us through to this point. But folks were looking at the hay sources that they have, and we're saying, okay, I could be okay if I got rid of 8 bales, and I'll donate 8 bales, or I'll donate 100 bales, or whatever it was. It may even been 2 bales, but they
Right.
knew that they were having an opportunity to make an impact and help feed, because, there are so many areas, this 800,000 acres. It's not like that grass is going to regrow. God bless my mama. She says, well, it'll rain and the grasses will grow. It's sand. It doesn't work that way like it does on dirt in the
Right.
eastern part of the state. And I was doing some reading, and they said it could take anywhere between 1 and 3 years to have this land be ready back for grazing.
Wow.
It's nuts.
Wow.
But I will say, if folks want to donate, if folks want to help, whether monetary or dropping off items, the Nebraska Department of Agriculture has a great link on their website. And I hate to say this in the day and age we're in, but be careful. Be careful for scammers who are trying to take advantage of your goodwill. Go to the Nebraska Department of Ag's website, because they have links to Farm Bureau, the Sandhills Relief Fund, and Nebraska Cattlemen. And those are 3 true sources where you can donate money to and know that they're going to go help those affected by the fires.
Well, I think that's a good place for us to leave off here for this episode. Susan, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
100%. I am a volunteer firefighter. I've been proud to be a volunteer firefighter since 1994. Don't do the math, because shame on you. But if you want to find a way to give back, if watching all of this happen around you or seeing it on the news intrigues you, please go to your local fire department. Reach out, ask them how you can become a volunteer. You don't have to be 18 and ready to go. You can be whatever age. Volunteers are always welcome. Volunteers are always needed. And you are never going to meet a better extended family than a volunteer firefighter. And even those paid guys, if that's what really floats your boat, go for it. But just find a way to give back to your community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again, Susan Littlefield, Farm and Ranch Media, farm broadcaster, American Ag Network reporter, and a personal friend of mine and a great colleague. So
Excellent.
I'm blessed and happy to know you, and I'm so thankful you were able to join us for this episode today. That's it for today, folks. As always, the goal here is to better understand what's happening in agriculture and what it means beyond the headlines. I'm Corryn La Rue, and for this episode, we're joined by Susan Littlefield, and this is Farm Unfiltered.